Simple announcements before we get started today. Just wanted to let everyone know that our book study, Learning from Buddha by His Holiness Dorji Chang Buddha III, has been reopened for new registrations as we've just restarted the book. This is a temporary reopening. We have also moved the date and time from Thursdays to Sundays at 5 o'clock. 5:30 to 7 o'clock p.m. on Sundays. So if you're interested in registration, please go to the retreat page of the website and you can sign up for that. We are still planning on having an in-person retreat September 30th to October 2nd, and that is objectless concentration with Bhante Sudaso. You can register for that on our website as well. A reminder that our novena prayers continue to occur monthly, and we are accepting prayer requests all the time. Just send those prayer requests, and this could be for living people who are suffering or experiencing distress of any kind, or this could be for people who have passed on. And you can send those prayers to prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org. We still continue to have opportunities to volunteer at Heartwood's thrift store, Thrifty Treasures. And if you're interested in helping out with that, just email thriftytreasureswnc.com. And of course, just as usual, please like, follow, and share Heartwood and Thrifty Treasures on social media so we can share, spread the Dharma. And thank you so much.
No, I just got back in.
Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all Buddhas appear. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. We pay homage, we offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. So about 10 minutes to 12 or 5 minutes to 12, Sister Suchness called me. She said, Venerable, I found it. I found it. I said, you found what? I found the man that robbed our store. She said, and she had gone and she hooked up. We have cameras, but I didn't know whether we really turned the cameras on because I was saying, well, that's in the store for shoplifters. And am I going to lock somebody up for a $10 item or a $20 item? I said, I'm not going to do it. So I don't care whether the cameras are on or not. But I think Sister Sessions and Sister Clear Grace had them hooked up anyway. Uh, the other thing I was saying was, what if I did? I'm not going to report it to the insurance because then my insurance will go up. I'd rather suffer a one-time loss than an annual loss because my insurance rate goes up. So that was my rationale. But they did hook it up, and she did was able to capture the image. Unfortunately, three stores were broken into on the weekend, just in the same block. Now I've seen the video of two, and they're two different people. So it could have been a buddy thing, it could have been individual thing, but my view about that, and this is how you can know whether your practice is working, or whether you really work in the Dharma or you just doing your own thing, is that when something happens that affects you, you are able to take it into stride, and you can just lump it together with the whole group of things that are happening to everybody everywhere, and you might decide, I got off easy today with whatever trouble I had, and it's a way that allows us then to be with life and the issues of life without feeling like the world is out to get you, like everything is about you. As Buddha Master says, they're all about me, me, me. He says, even when you feel sick, and I'm not sure I'm fully up with him on this. He says, like, even when you're feeling sick, and you have cramps and pains in your stomach and pains in your head, all it's me, 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 my pain, my head. So I woke at 2:30 this morning, so it's almost time for me to go to bed now. But I woke at 2:30, and I woke up with a splitting headache, and I I got up and I took a Bayer aspirin, and half an hour later it wasn't working, so I got up and took a Tylenol to go with it, and and it still wasn't working. So I put back on my Supreme and Unsurpassable Mahamudra of Liberation, and I played through it. And what I realized is that I'm trying to listen to it twice a day, and it takes a little over 2 hours. and not only to listen to it, but I'm trying to break it down line by line and really reflect on each line. And I have so many holes uh, in my practice. I'll tell you, it's so wonderful to know that, because you can think your whole game is woven together, unless it gets pointed out for you. Um, or if you compare yourself to where others are, you might think you're ahead of the game. But when you compare yourself to where there is to go, you can find out that you're woefully lacking. And so to acknowledge that and to be glad about that, is a wonderful, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful experience. I've always said, if the only thing to know is what I know, then there's just no hope for mankind. And so it feels good to be uh, in a growing spurt at the moment, and I deeply prize and I cherish it. So there's a part of that practice, for those of us who are aspiring bodhisattvas, of bodhisattvas in the causal phase, it's called. Um, that when you really start to move from a mental ascent around something, like pray for all the hungry kids in Biafra, but I'm not doing anything to feed them, kind of like that. Or yeah, I want somebody to do something about people over here, but not me. I'm not going. It's that, like, it stops short of what's for my safety, or what's for my protection, or what's will interfere with my comfort. But I will send prayers over there. I'll send some money over there. But as far as me going, not so much. And so, um, and I'm not saying that our prayers are useless. I'm not saying that the money is of no benefit. I'm just saying we can all look and notice within our own lives where we stop short of actual conduct that's in line with the way we say our heart is. So that means then that if there is the inclination, if there's the interest, if there is the desire, but we stop short on our conduct, then there's a little more fixing that needs to take place in the heart. And that's what's so wonderful about the Buddha's teachings, because you can always find yourself there and know that you're not lost if you're really searching for coming up to the completion stage of this path. It's not just a path of practice. Like, it's a path of practice, period. No, it's a path of accomplishment, and we practice until we are accomplished. That's like being on the football team and you're only ever at the practices, you never get to play in the game. And so sometimes we can be doing something for so long that we accept that this is all that there is to it, and we just like hunker down and settle down in that. And with a nothing's perfect, nobody's perfect, I'm certainly not perfect, and all that's okay kind of thing. So I remember back when I was in college, and the big psychology of that day was, I'm okay, you're okay. And I think it set a precedent for something. I mean, you can have extremes on either end, when nobody's okay and when everybody's okay. And neither one of those really get us they can't fulfill our heart, and we can't fulfill a destiny that we establish simply because we're leaning too heavily on one side or the other. What I like about some of the teachings in the Bible, he said it's the word of God is a heart fixer and a mind regulator. And I find that to be true about the Dharma. The only thing about the Dharma is that while we develop faith in the awakening of the Buddha, and not just this Buddha, but all the Buddhas throughout space of time that have come even to this world. The Buddha said he was the fifth Buddha, um, and that can be um, just a number. I mean, we can just it signifies number one, more than one, and it also signifies that it wasn't something that he discovered or he developed or whatever, but he rediscovered something that had been lost. So when you have something that is prized and that is valuable, that has been misplaced, lost, something precious left to you, and you find it, you rediscover it, how wonderful that is. And we hold to that gratitude, and we learn how to acquaint ourselves with that thing, or reacquaint ourselves if we had seen a part of it and then misplaced it. Like sometimes we do after 10 or 15 or 20 years of practicing, we kind of misplace the placement of the Dharma in our life. And we kind of run ahead of the instructions. We lose that beginner's mind, and we think we know, and we look to all the, when you're learning something for the first time. It's like I remember when I took the realtor's exam. I tell you, all worldly Dharma is Buddha Dharma. You can find everything that Dharma has to teach you about everything right in our normal everyday walking life. So when I was studying for the real estate broker's exam, well, I had been an investor before that. So I learned all the tricks of the trade. I learned all the secret financing techniques. I learned all the ways to get around things and to do things, and to get things. And so when I went and decided I was going to open a real estate brokerage and let other people go out and buy and sell it, I just take a half of that. That's what a broker does. Um, it was difficult preparing for that test, and you take the scratch test, and I kept failing and failing. And I was like, I don't understand what the problem is. And so I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, the problem is you already know too much. This is geared for the person who's just entering into this field. You got to get a beginner's mind. That was the first time I ever heard the phrase. Before I heard it spoken in Dharmic circles, I heard it in the real estate circle. He said, you have to get a beginner's mind. You have to think like somebody who hasn't been out here wheeling and dealing, surviving, and you're going to have to start at the beginning and pretend that you don't know anything but what was in that manual. And if it's not in that manual, don't think, oh, but this is a way that you can do it. Just go by, if it's either in the manual or it's not. And I went back and I aced that test that time, because, but it took a little bit because I had to think now, is this something that I learned? This my street smarts? Or is this the way that they're just, like trying to condition everybody to cultivate a certain mindset, and everybody color within the lines, and I would have to question some of them, because I didn't even realize that I was overthinking the question, you know, or I was thinking, yeah, that's true in most situations, but it's not in all, but at that time with that beginner's mind, they just want to stay within the lines because that sets up one's mentality, to function in a certain way. And then when true knowledge has been attained, then one can color outside the lines. They can create all kinds of art, so much so that you can't even recognize what they're drawing. And yet people pay millions of dollars for it, because they see something in it, or each one sees something in it. Or just like in the natural world, spiritual things are like that. And so doing this practice, there's some, I won't say imagining, because that word just kind of gets people a little bit. It's sort of like, uh, what's that other word they use? Um, when you're mm, visualize, right? But I'm going to say imaging because, like imaging is an acceptable word today. It sounds more technical, more scientific, more like 21st century, 21st century. Yeah, okay. More 21st century. And so I'll say imaging, and so sometimes, we don't recognize that we're always imaging, You know, we're always, putting something together, creating something, fabricating something, visualizing something. It's just that we may not follow it all the way through. We get the gist of it, and then we start conceptualizing, and we make something. So some of the practices in the Buddha Dhamma, or I'll call them methods as opposed to practice. Okay. I'm trying to get away from that word practice, but some of the methods are designed to cause us or allow us to use our faculties in a more powerful way, to use our capacity, to construct and to create and to birth things in the world, that, and it can often lie dormant. Sometimes, as my brother Jim said, sometimes you got to get a knock on the head before you'll let those things come through, you know. And so there's a part in this practice in the Supreme and Unsurpassable Mahamudra liberation where you're, there's this saying that if the Buddha jumped into a lake of swords, I think it is, that the swords will turn to flowers or something like that, because of the power of its own mind, you know, and to step out of the selfing so that there is no self to be injured, something like that. Okay, and so there is a part of this practice, and I'm not going to go into the practice, but it's where you're taking on, for all of those who are bodhisattvas to be, who want to take on, the suffering of others and neutralize it and give them your peace and your joy and your freedom, liberty, and contentment. It takes something more than just thinking about that in your mind, where it doesn't touch you at all, because everything else, everything concerning you touches not only your mind, but it touches your body too, right? You have visceral feelings about everything. But when we get into this taking on the suffering of others, like that's just an in your head thing. And so in this particular method of practice, uh, he reminds us that you, as long as it's still in your head, you're not there with it yet. When the pain, somebody else's pain touches you the way your own pain touches you, then you're there, you know. And so I was working with that in the corpse pose, and I slipped off and I fell asleep. And so, and I was just beginning to really, for the first time after like uh, eight eight times, I think over 5 days, going through um, the steps of the method, working with retooling, working with my own mind, and for the first time, when I started thinking about the suffering of others and the offenses that they've committed, and the pain of that, experiencing it like a mountain of swords. Suddenly, I started feeling like I was being cut everywhere, you know, and even though it was painful, it wasn't like full throttle. It was just the beginning of cuts, like paper cuts. Like a paper cut can hurt really, really bad, and yet you can't hardly see it. So it wasn't like knife cuts, but it was like paper cuts. But I was truly identifying with the results of in this particular part, is those who have committed offenses, you know, and inherent in the action is the also the result. And it helps one to develop compassion for wrongdoers. Um, so I start to feel like all these paper cuts because I'm like climbing up this sort of a fence. First you lie, if you lie, you steal. You lie and you steal. If you lie and you steal, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And that's how people who take a path of unwholesomeness get caught up in a web and can't even get out of it. And then they're doing have that saying that I used to say 30 years ago. I said, why is it that I would do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I do. That was the dilemma I was in that made me search for a path of not redemption, but a path of liberation and freedom from that kind of mind. And uh, so I was just feeling these cuts and it was like hurting. I'm like, yow, I'm actually feeling the repercussions, the pain of wrongdoing, that how it sears and how it burns you, how it literally cooks you when you know you've done something wrong. And yet your pride won't let you acknowledge it, or won't, or your fear of rejection won't let you acknowledge it, or your confusion about what to do about it, or why I'm even doing it, won't let you, acknowledge it. And so I was feeling all of that, and I was like, too much, too much. I need some relief. And I just sort of like slipped off to sleep, and there was the relief. So then I wake up a couple of hours later. I'm in searing pain, but I remembered back when I was doing another meditation that I learned. It was uh, Genshin, and it was a Chinese practice. And this was a practice of eating the sun and the moon. And there's certain qualities of the sun, that we take in, and certain energies that the moon give us. Okay, so I was doing this, and I was um, imagining the sun and the moon moving up and down, following the pattern of the method, and only certain students were allowed to take that up, because that teacher felt that you had to really be uh, uh, mature, meaning understanding enough and having a deep conviction for um, who you want to be in the world. Uh, and uh, and so I was doing the practice, and I was disturbed. So my concentration wasn't deep enough, right? And I think the telephone rang or something, or either it was the doorbell, I forget, but whatever it was, it threw me out of my concentration. And later that day, I was having difficulty, and I was taken to the hospital, and they thought that I'd had a seizure or a stroke or something like that. And so I said, shoot, I need prayer. Let me call my teacher. I called my teacher. He said, what were you doing um, when you did this? So I said, well, Master Yin, I was doing the sun and the moon contemplation or something like that. He said, and then what happened? He said, tell me exactly what happened. I said, well, I was doing it, and um, he said, did you finish? I said, no. The phone rang, and I got distracted. I answered the phone. He said, oh, just go back, start at the beginning, do the whole thing, close properly, and you'll be okay. So right there in the hospital in the bed, I closed my eyes and I went through the whole practice and closed properly, and it was all gone. And then I went back home, and that was the end. That was the end of it. So I was thinking about that this morning when I woke up, and I redid the whole thing. And I'm going to tell you, I passed through that point of feeling the pain because I passed through for a minute. I passed through Panyawadi, and on the other side of Panyawadi, where there was no Panyawadi, there was also no pain. So when you take up these practices, that's why they're not for everybody. It depends on your resolve. It depends on what you already know, whether you're ready for it. It depends on how you walk through it. And it's going to take something, for you to get through it. So if a person tells me they're not interested, they're not ready, I agree with them. And when a person tells me that they are, then they have to know that they're going to have a learning experience. I'll just say it that way. Um, so that was the first thing that happened. So from 2:30 on, after I got to that sweet spot, it's like when you're dropping in to um, concentration, and everything that's wraps you up, you feel yourself constrained. The deeper and deeper you go into concentration, the more and more constrained you feel. You feel like you have fetters, things tethering you to the ground, tethering you to this reality. And you become acutely aware of them as you start your descent in concentration. In the beginning, you just feel like you, but the more you become settled and more there's a refinement, of your energy, the more you become aware that you're tethered to things and that you're tied up. Um, and and then you get to a place, if you just keep going with that descent, that the tethers break one by one or two by two, and you find yourself like free form. You find yourself like almost like floating, no longer tied or inhibited, uh, and you start to like enlarge. You grow magnanimously. Your vision expands, and just the sense of contentment. That's the kind of joy and happiness that the Buddha's talking about, but it's something that this world can't give you. And you cross a boundary to where for that time it can't take it away. It can't take it away from you. But we can't abide in that all the time until that is really our stable, steadfast mind. So we can enjoy that. That's why in Sutta number 8, is it, or 6, on effacement, the rubbing out of self, he talks about this and he says, I don't call that practice. Said, I just call that a pleasant abiding here and now, because you get to touch it, you get to taste it. That's how you know that there is some way of being in this world that is possible, even though the world is fraught with danger, but there is a place of safety for you right here in this world. And even though things may happen to you in the course of the day, they don't utterly consume you and you're not overtaken by them. And even if you get off the path, you know the path, you can just get back on the path. And if you don't know the path, you can't get back on. Or if you're on it and don't know you're on it, that's like a man having $1 million in the bank in his name and he doesn't know it. He won't spend it, you know. And so we have to know what is path. We have to know where we are on the path, on the map. I am here, and we have to be able to trust the map. And so a lot of the initial uh, training in Dharmic principle is to help you get a lay of the land, a kind of a picture of the territory, but the map is not the territory. And so many times we start to think that the map is the territory. So we start memorizing everything. We know how many miles and we know, but that's not the real journey. That's just the map. No, we have to take the journey. And when we look on the map and we see hills and mountains and valleys and water streams, we're not really in them. We're just looking at them from our own side, but we have not engaged with them. So much of our Dharma is an intellectual exercise, even though we may be intently intellectual about it, intently examining and but uh, it takes the full immersion in the conduct of it. And the only time we know what that is when we come up against something that puts that to the test. It's not that they're there to test us, but when we encounter it, we are put to the test, and then we can see how we're doing. We know whether we need to, you know, make some shifts in how we walk out the walk. So this morning, I got up and I just, just getting a really good download after going through that experience. Now I'm like, mind's clear. I mean, it was like really, really clear. Just the Paniwadi fog is now redescending, right? But it was just everything was so crystal clear and and I was so full of energy, but not in a jittery inner kind of way, but just like a no holds barred, like I confidently go that way. It was something like that. And I began to write. I had a pad that was about the size of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. That thing was too small. I went and got a big uh, uh, whatever it is, 24 by 17 paper, and started writing on it as the things were coming to me so fast. And then around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock this morning, I started checking my emails. And by 9 o'clock, I have like maybe 75 emails. So if I start checking the emails, I mean, that's my time for the next 2 hours, just getting through those emails. And and one thing I get online is the Times News. And I'm telling you this because this is our 50 weeks to transformation. And I'm trying to uh, uh, show you how uh, to walk out your life with the Dharma, and how to take it from being like a book study or or hearing what happened to somebody else and finding the clarity to know yourself and to know exactly what is happening in your life, to understand causality from a direct experience perspective. Um, and so I subscribe to the local news. Um, and on the front page, they had a North Carolina politician, the one who just said recently, how he recommended that you buy all the guns you can, and who carries a knife with him whenever he rolls around, and who said uh, that as much as he would hate to, kill fellow North Carolinians, if you're on the wrong side of the issues, you know, he was sorry that there was. He still recommended bloodshed, Now, and then today's on the front page story about him was that he was having complications, from his illness. He has a long-term illness, um, um, a very obvious one, and suddenly he's having um, complications, and they're so extreme that he was asking people to pray for him. And I saw Paniwadi. After all of that happened at 2:30 in the morning, I saw Paniwadi. The first thing that rose up for me concerning him was not compassion. It really wasn't. I would have to say, I won't say I was happy that he may not be able to continue out his service and be replaced, but I can say I wasn't sad. I can say, um, and um, it had nothing to do with fiercely protecting the Dharma. You understand what I mean? I'm talking about what was rising up in me, honestly, about how I felt and how um, maybe if people are so misinformed and so confused and so ignorant that they voted for him and put him in that seat of power, maybe this is the only thing that could remove him, then it's not a bad thing. And I was immediately pricked. I wasn't pricked before the thought came, but the thought rose, I grabbed it, you know, and immediately when I touched it, it was like a hot coal, you know. And I said, this right here, this is what he's talking about. Intellectually, I have compassion for all beings, especially wayward ones, that they find the right path and right direction and step out of their suffering, then they won't cause us suffering. Now, I can talk it out, you know, but in that moment, there it was. And the wonderful thing, second wonderful, most wonderful, would have been for it not to have been there. But the second most wonderful was to immediately and see it in hot coal. There it is right there, you know. And then I stopped and I did my practice. I did uh, that portion of the Mahamudra of liberation where one must uh, uh, empathize with the one who is with the wrongdoer until they get beyond the person to experience the ignorance that is upon the person. Do you hear what I'm saying? And so as you're practicing, when things start getting and people start telling you, oh, it doesn't take all of that, you know, you're gonna have to know for yourself what it takes for you. Some things are allowable for others, that's not allowable for me. So when you say to me, oh, it doesn't take all of that, Panyawadi, you shouldn't do that, you're actually going against my great wish, you know. And the concurrence of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas for me, based on my great wish. Maybe it doesn't take all that for you, but it might for me. And there are a few people in my life that I observe, and I think like they're a little bit too extreme for me, you know. And I'm just like, it doesn't take all that, but I'm not at their level. It doesn't take all of that for me, but it might take all of that for them. That's why we have to be careful not to overlay what we think on, on other people, because we're interfering, perhaps, you know, in in their path. So I was thinking today that when we really condense, you know, the Buddha's teaching and the teaching of all the Buddhas, I like to add an S on it nowadays, all the Buddha's teachings, it centers around causality, you know, cause and condition. Their causality has two horns. It's two ways that it like enters into your life. And one is, like when this is, that means that when one is um, initiating something, the results is also in that. And right now you see what's being initiated, but later when the fullness of time has come, when there is a time of reckoning or harvesting, then you'll see the result. And that might occur right here. Like this is the action, this is the result, or this is the action, this is the result. It can be long time coming, or it can be immediate coming. But if we really do embrace the notion of causality, we wouldn't be mad with anybody about anything that they really do to us or anything that happens to us. The only reason why we are upset about it is because we feel like we didn't do anything to deserve it. We can't see, in our confusion, in our deluded states, we can't understand how this could remotely have anything to do with me, and yet here it is in my life. And so so you have this, when this is the fruit is born in the action. But now the other part of causality is from the arising of this comes that. And that's where we have something to do with it. You see, you can't say, oh, that's just my habitual tendency. Oh, that's just the way I was raised. Oh, that's just the way I think. Oh, that's it, but with the arising of this comes the arising of that. And with the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. And so the encouragement to immediately stop and identify is to not be constantly accusing oneself or blaming oneself, but to readily identify what besets us. And we can cut off one half of the karma, if not the whole thing. We can make sure that what is arising is wholesome. And we do that through being watchful and thoughtful about the slightest fault, the slightest action, being truthful, utterly truthful. That's why a little slipping and sliding will take you a long way. You'll be so far away at the bottom of that slide, you don't know how you got over there, because just being a hair off, a hair off ends up at the end being like that. And you don't know even how you got there. You say, that's not me. And you'll be perplexed and confused. But when you're on that straight trajectory and you land right at the bottom, right where you expected to land, oh, you have so much confidence in your ability to lead this life meaningfully and successfully and with accomplishment. So there's not just practice that we look at. There lies awaiting an accomplishment for us. And the joy that knowing that one can accomplish. You can accomplish. We don't talk that much about accomplishment. We just named the whole thing practice. I mean, that I'm stop using, I keep saying I am, but I just refer to practice here and there because everybody knows what that is. But now I'm about to take practice home to where it goes. So that we can start thinking in terms of finishing of what it takes to accomplish. And how your daily life is what's real. What we read, but what we do, we do. One difference between the Dharma, I think, and maybe some other religions, is where their faith is based on the completed work of another, the accomplishment of another. And we're relying on that. But where Dharmic practice comes in is that we're not relying on the completed work of another to get me over the hump, but it is an acknowledgement or a faith in another's that awakening is possible. He did it. He woke up and he said, I can tell you what I did. You can use some of this and maybe, and and you can wake up too. And so, excuse me. And so it's a different kind of faith. It's one where we're asked to, you know, you do have to start with a sort of faith in something, a belief in something, and we do all the time. Like when we go to bed at night and make our plans before and our appointments for tomorrow and lay out our clothes, like we believe we're gonna wake up. So we're always, as much as we say, like I'm not a person that I'm not a big believer in things. Like I want proofs, like and all throughout, our actions in life, we are taking certain things for granted. We are assuming certain things. We're having faith in. We're having belief in certain things. But our faith in the Buddha's awakening keeps pointing back to the power of our own actions. The power of our own choices, the power of our intentions, you know, like if I have intention to be harmless, you know, well, can I recognize when there's something that I'm thinking that goes against the law of harmlessness? Sometimes we can't, we don't see it. We don't get it. Sometimes we do. And we make the choice at that moment that um, I have a right to feel this way. I have a right to think this way about them. They've earned that bad rep, and that's why he keeps saying one of an understanding temperament condemns mental formations, where one of a hating temperament condemns living beings. And of course, sometimes when you pointing something out, um, then people feel like you are condemning them when you're condemning the action, you know, um, because that's how we normally think. We don't think of condemning the action. The action's not there to hear, but the person is. So we take it as a condemnation of us. We take it as a rejection of us. We take it as a criticism of us. But if we got rid of that uh, false sense of a self, then we just then hear the indictment against, you know, the 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 action and not against us, you see. So we have work to do on both sides with this whole notion of what is being, looked at right there. Um, and so it's in these ways that he said that we will come to know the deathless. That like sounds like a scary word. Like, I mean, if you use those first 5 letters, death, I don't think, don't want to have the conversation even, you know. But he said it's in these ways you'll come to know the deathless, because they'll stop being a person, a me that is feeling personally attacked. And then I could hear the good advice or I could hear the bad advice, either way, you know, and I could find that the bad advice finds nothing in me, and that the good advice, I could take it without any sense of shame. So free in both ways. So now I know you all know all of this, right? And today, this is just a reminder. We think that the trajectory of the Dharma like just shoots like that, but it's more like this, and it's the spiraling of this energy, when someone is like um, throwing a, what do you call that? what is it? Boomerang. Well, I would say more lasso than boomerang because I know boomerang, you throw it in it by the shape of it creates something that brings it back. But I was thinking about let's use lasso. I was thinking about something else, but a lasso is there. But when you circle it, it builds up a certain kind of momentum. And when you let it go, it it has enough power of its own to hit if you're focused enough on its landing point to get there, and you can yoke it. By the same token, if you look at like a slinky, and how it goes round and round, and but it not doesn't keep coming back to the same place. It goes around, but it comes back, a little uh, higher, a little higher, a little higher, a little higher, and that's how the Dharma is. I mean, it's very little we have to go around with. It's very few, you know, the 84,000 teachings really help us to understand like three. It's just said in that many different ways, just trying to help us get it and help us to see, have clarity, because we're in such a fog of confusion and perplexity and mental uh weakness, you know. And I mean, I know I just triggered somebody just now when I said mental weakness. Uh, I'm just saying the we have not exercised our faculties by reason of use. They're weak, but not just because they're weak, but weak through lack of use. Some we haven't even awakened at all. And so this whole way of practicing is to encourage that kind of waking up from our misperceptions and delusion and faulty appearances of the true nature of reality. And um, and if we can just leave it impersonal like that, we will find that what's more personal is our impersonality. What's more personal is that we're a piece of it all. And we're tied up with the knots of samsara, and all he offers is a way to loosen the knot. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you and no danger. May you always be able to meet the inevitable difficulties.